Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Document Management Straight Out of the Box. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by my colleague Damien. And Damien will be taking us through a bit of a demo of some document management software later on called DocuWare. Now, before we kick it off, you'll notice on the right-hand side or at the top, there's a GoToWebinar toolbar. And in the toolbar towards the bottom, there's an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. And Damien and myself will do our best to get through those at the end. So today we're here to talk to you about implementing a simple and effective document management solution, but with a bit of a difference, a bit of a twist. And we'll go through that in a bit more details in a second. So usually when we start these webinars, we always talk about issues with storing paper in or documents in sort of paper filing cabinets or storing documents in network shares. But I wanted to spin that on its head a little bit and just talk about some of the benefits that our customers have received when implementing a document management solution. So the most common one, I suppose the most obvious one, is productivity. Now, if you can have your documents stored in one central location and having your team or your users access those documents via permissions, what we tend to find is actually when you're storing documents, it's a lot quicker and a lot easier and sometimes automated if you have one central location. But likewise, when you're searching and retrieving documents, it's also a lot easier and a lot quicker to do that. And you'll see that with some of the functionality Damien will show you in a few minutes' time on the demo. Now, something that's quite poignant at the moment, of course, is access. So over the last 4 to 5 months, we've been approached by quite a few customers who have tried to improve the way that their staff or their team are accessing documents. Perhaps they've had a bit of a hybrid mix of documents in filing cabinets, documents in network shares, which are accessing over VPN, and even documents in systems like a CRM system, for example. But again, if you can have one central location where you're allowing your users to access those documents with strict permissions, it just makes our day-to-day working life a lot easier. But one of the big benefits is not only accessing those documents, but carrying out actions on those documents as well. And we've had a few horror stories over the last 4 to 5 months where people like IT directors or department heads have driven back into the office to pick up bunches of invoices to sign off. So you don't have to do that. If you've got a device with an internet connection, whether it be a PC, a laptop, a smartphone, a tablet, whether you're at home, whether you're in the office, it doesn't matter. You should be able to access the documents you have permission to see, but also carry out actions on those documents as well. Now, as businesses start to get smarter, they're looking for their IT to become smarter as well. So what we tend to find is when customers come to us, one of the big drivers is they're looking to automate processes where they can. And to give you a very, very high level but simple example of this, it may be that when an invoice comes into a department, perhaps it's a certain value, perhaps for argument's sake it's £10,000, and for your business it needs to take a different route through the business before being signed off. That's where document management systems really come into their own. They can make decisions for you and therefore reduce the amount of document handling that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And of course, the knock-on effect of that is you get an increase in productivity as well. So, as I've mentioned, we have been quite busy over the last 4 to 5 months helping customers with access problems for their documentation so their staff can access the documents they have permission to see from home or in the office. But we've also been busy creating something a little bit different. And the reason we've done this is that although we've implemented quite a few document management systems over this time period, is that some of our customers and some of our contacts were still a little bit worried about any sort of upfront costs or big capex costs, that they would have to cater for when implementing a document management solution. So this did put a few people off, and a few customers decided to hold off. So we thought, well, how can we address this? And the other issue was there's sort of what we call here a perceived risk of that it was going to be too much of a project, and Jill in the council always does things in a certain way, and will she be able to change? And that sort of perceived risk is going to be too much to take on at the moment. So what we've done is we went away and we've configured 3 pre-configured workflows within DocuWare. Now, at the moment, they are centered around the finance department, but that's not to say they couldn't be tweaked and moved over to other departments as well. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail a bit later on. But we've done this, of course, to cater for the complexity of projects and hopefully make them a little bit simpler. And hopefully you'll see that on the demo as well. But of course, we've done this because we've sort of heard the message from our customers that they are concerned about CapEx costs at the moment. And we wanted to offer them at least 2 solutions with no upfront costs at all. And when Damien takes you through this, you'll see the differences between the simple, the intermediate, and the advanced workflows. And then I can come back afterwards and take you through the pricing and what we've actually allowed for in a bit more detail. So on that note, I'm going to pass you over to Damien. I'm just going to make Damien the presenter. And I'll come back in about 20 minutes time, and we'll go through the pricing for these options, and we'll go through any questions that we received. And that's something I should have said at the start. But if you do want to ask any questions, there is a box at the bottom, so please feel free to type in anything you want to ask us.
Great. Thank you, Chris. So let me share my screen. So hopefully you can see my screen okay now. Excellent stuff. Okay, now before I get on with the demo, shall we start with a quick tour? As you can see, DocuWare is a web-based application, and it's compatible with all the mainstream web browsers, which means you don't have to install any software to use the system. And there is also a mobile app, which we can see here, and we'll go through that a bit later. So we have some tabs along the top here, which will take you to some of the functionality in DocuWare, and I'll go through some of those as part of the demo. And on the right-hand side, we have the document viewing pane. So Chris mentioned 3 packages that we're providing or offering, the simple, intermediate, and advanced options. And I'm going to start off and show you the simple option. So this package includes a digital archive for search and retrieval, and also a workflow process for invoice approval. So if we start off with capturing some documents, now you can capture documents from a scanner or from email, or you can just import them from a network directory like this. And I'm going to capture them into my document tray. So within DocuWare, a document tray is like a virtual version of the in-tray on your desk before you take documents to the filing cabinet. And you can see a little grey bar going up and down on the top left-hand corner of these documents. And this is the DocuWare Intelligent Indexing Engine, which is like an artificial intelligence algorithm, which is using optical character recognition to turn a document or an image into data. What it's trying to do is to make your job as easy as possible. And we can see here it's using a traffic light system to show its confidence that it's captured the information correctly, it understands what that document is. So if we go ahead and store one of these documents, actually let's grab 2 to save ourselves time. I can see here one's red and one's amber, so maybe it's not quite as confident and needs a little bit of teaching. But if we go ahead and store both these in the simple filing cabinet, and each of these fields is green, so these are index values that we're assigning to this document so that we can maybe find it later or trigger different workflows using that information. Now, to teach the intelligent indexing engine is quite simple. If we click on these fields, we can see DocuWare is highlighting them on the right-hand side just to let us visually check that it's got that correct. Let's say it failed to find the invoice number. We can teach it by just hovering over and clicking on it. So we haven't had to type anything, DocuWare has this thing called single-click indexing, which means you can either click on things or highlight a section, and DocuWare will just fill it in for you. Now, as part of the workflow, we could assign this to a user now, but what we want to do is we want to trigger the workflow, maybe pass it on to another team to go through those invoices and then assign them to the relevant department heads for authorization. So we'll just go ahead and store both of those. Now, along the top in the tabs, you'll probably see the numbers increasing by lists and tasks. So lists are basically saved searches, which are quite handy to use like a dashboard, so you can see documents moving through the system. So we can see here the unassigned invoices. So these are the invoices that we've just stored. And we can see in tasks, we have a simple invoice approval process. And we can see here the 3 invoices that are kind of awaiting assignment to their authorizer. So we could go ahead and maybe, actually, if I open up the mobile app, maybe we can just do this in the mobile app, make it a bit simpler. So let's say you're not in the office, you're out and about, and you just want to quickly go through and assign these to somebody. We can click on here. We can make a decision. We can assign to an authorizer, and we can select the relevant authorizer here. If you want to do, we could do it in the web browser. So if we just choose the invoice, click on assign to authorizer, select the authorizer, and click on confirm. So we'll just do a couple of these. I'll assign one to myself as well. And in a moment, we'll see these documents coming back into the task list for approval. So you can see here, one's come back already. And what DocuWare is also doing in the background, if we have a look at our email, we can see here we're receiving email notification. So DocuWare is trying to kind of keep the flow of that document through the business and avoid any kind of bottlenecks in that approval process. So if we just go ahead and we can approve it. If you can see as well, there are also stamps being applied for each action, providing a visual history of what's happened to that document. We also have a toolbox here. Maybe you needed to print it or email it or add some annotations, that kind of thing. But we'll just go ahead and approve that. So that's my approval task done. And DocuWare is really good at putting a task in front of somebody at the point at which they need to do something. When you complete your task, it leaves your task list, and that's the process done. So those are my tasks completed. Now, because I'm an admin here, I can also monitor tasks. So you might want to see what else is going on. So other documents that are going through the business. And here's the other invoice that we stored, and we can see it's been assigned to the finance manager. Now, because I'm an admin, I could maybe approve it on their behalf, or let's say the finance manager's on holiday, I could reassign it to somebody else. In this situation, I'm just going to approve it. And when the task comes back around, I just complete it, and that's the process done. So the next stage might be searching for a particular document. So we can go ahead and use the search option. So if we go ahead in here, let's say somebody's called in and said, hi, I'm from Rapid Transport. I want to find out the status of my invoice. We can say, here's the invoice, company name Rapid Transport. With a couple of clicks, we could find the particular invoice. So let's say it's this one that we've just processed and completed. So we can see the visual history of those actions. We could also right-click it, select the history, and see who's performed each of those actions, when it was approved, when it was completed, who it was completed by. And if we wanted to answer the query there and then, maybe we could email a copy of that document to the person making the request. So hopefully with this simple package, I've shown the digital archive for storage and retrieval, a simple invoice approval workflow. Now, all we need from a customer or prospect to get this set up is a few pieces of information. So here's a quick spreadsheet here for the index values of the documents for storage and retrieval, some example document types that are quite typical for a finance filing cabinet, and a list of the users and permissions and whether they're going to be an authorizer as part of the workflow. So the next option is the intermediate package. So this includes a few more features such as line item capture, general ledger coding, cost center assignment if multiple people need to approve an invoice. There's also two-way matching in there, and a secondary approval process if maybe an invoice is over a certain value. So if we go ahead and we can use the line item capture option. Now I'm not going to bother capturing some more invoices, we can just go ahead and store a couple of these. And you can see with the line item capture, it's captured the what we call header information, just as the other one did. But what it's also captured is that bit in the middle. So each of the line items have been captured. I'll zoom out a little bit. We can see the table in a bit more detail. So we can see this is the whole table. We can configure which columns to capture, but DocuWare has done a pretty good job of understanding the difference between an item number and a description. We can capture each of the columns here, and we'll just go ahead and store that. You'll notice this one, the value of the invoice is quite high, and this is going to trigger that kind of value-based rule that we'll see in the approval process later. So now that we've captured those invoices, again, the lists are really handy, so we can see we now have these invoices at the pending stage. And hopefully our tasks should have increased. So we'll go into the kind of more detailed invoice approval for the intermediate option, and we're going to now code these invoices. Make this a bit bigger so you can see it a bit better. So we might have some general ledger codes. So these can be, anything that you want them to be, whether that's text or numbers. We can link them to your own Excel spreadsheets. We can make these values mandatory. We can assign different values, so different cost centers have to approve different line items on that particular invoice. And that will go through what we call a split booking process. So that will assign that to each of the individual managers for those departments. Now, you'll probably notice that one of these invoices hasn't actually gone through an authorization process. So we can see here that this one has actually gone straight to pay. And the reason this has gone straight through to pay is it's gone through a two-way matching process. If I right-click the document and select related documents, we can see here that there's a corresponding purchase order for that document. And DocuWare has checked, is there a corresponding purchase order? Do the values match? Is it within a certain value? If that all fits, then we can just go ahead and send that to pay, and we'll complete the process. So again, because I'm an administrator on the system, I've got the ability to authorize this invoice on behalf of everybody. But if we have a look at monitor tasks, we'll be able to see that this individual invoice is actually assigned to me, the marketing manager, and the HR manager to sign, because it's a split booking process with different cost centers assigned to it. But if I just go back to my tasks, And if I show you this in the mobile app, because I haven't actually shown an invoice approve yet, we can go to the invoice itself. You can use kind of pinch to zoom, check on the document, and make a decision, approve the invoice, confirm that, and hopefully in the background you should see that invoice has now disappeared because I've done performed the workflow action on my phone, and that's the job done. So notice this is the invoice that will have quite a large value to it. So it has now triggered this secondary approval process. So we can go ahead, again, it's assigned to the finance manager because it's over £5,000. And this might relate to a typical kind of situation in your business where you might have the authority to sign off invoices up to a certain value, but over that it has to go to a director. So hopefully that's covered some of the features in the intermediate option, and Chris also mentioned the advanced package. So the advanced package is really for companies who are looking to integrate DocuWare more deeply with their other systems and leverage some of the enhanced features of DocuWare to make the most out of the automation possibilities. So as part of that, we've actually developed an application to export data from DocuWare, either on a manual basis or as an automated schedule. So by using this, you could integrate with, say, Sage, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, etc. So if we go to our export profiles, we'll run this, but it might run, let's say, once a day, once a week at a certain time. And this is going to extract the information that I've configured from those invoices to a CSV file. So if we just click on this, we can see this is the file it's just created. And then typically what you would do is configure your finance application or whatever application is managing this for you to monitor the folder, pick up the file, and it can update all of its records with the relevant values, GL code numbers, quantities, that kind of thing. But it's just a way to automate that capture and import so that somebody doesn't have to sit there and do a whole data entry role. DocuWare also has a local data connector, which can update databases and tables and other systems based on actions and data. So, for example, maybe flag that an invoice has been paid or an order has been received, and we could also update GRN numbers. DocuWare also has forms, which are really handy for, let's say, capturing contact details, supplier onboarding processes, purchase requests. But anytime you want to capture information from an external party through a public form or through internal users through a private form, DocuWare has some great features to do that as well. And lastly, the thing that I was going to show is integrated digital signatures. So this is really to make it quick and easy. If you need to get a document signed legally, like a contract or a purchase order, DocuWare can kind of help you out with that. So we'll go to our inbox. We have a contract here as an example, and I'll go ahead and store this. And we can fill out some details to make it easy to find later. Now, obviously, you're going to want to put in the details of the person who needs to sign the document, their email address and phone number for that kind of two-factor authentication to validate the signature. And we'll click on store. And again, we can probably see a list here. We'll have, there we go, it's popped into unsigned contract. So we now know that we have outstanding contracts that need a signature. We should see a task. So here's a task to confirm the contract has been signed. And again, if I pop back to my mobile, we'll kind of show the process of the person who needs to make the signature. So in just a moment, here we go. We've got the email to say for review and signature, access the document. And you can use all the normal tools on your phone to pinch and zoom into the document. There's a wizard that takes you through the whole process. I'm just going to click on sign. Now DocuWare will send me a text message with the code to confirm my signature. And once that's done, it will prompt me to sign it, so I can sign it with my signature. And the clever part is the document that's stored in DocuWare, this app is going to update the document that's already in DocuWare with my signature. And hopefully if I go back, we can see in the list, the unsigned contract is no longer there because it has updated the status to say that it's been signed. We just need to confirm that it's been signed. So if we go to the contract, if we go to the signature page, we can see down here that the document's been signed. You may want to countersign it as well. So we'll just put our signature on there as well. And to kind of confirm the legal admissibility of the document, there's a report behind it as well to kind of support that. So we'll just confirm that task. And that's done. So hopefully that's shown you some of the features and how easy it is to set up the simple package, some of the features in the intermediate option, and also maybe some of the possibilities in the advanced option as well. So I'll hand you back to Chris for the last part of the webinar.
Great, thank you, Damien. So just to summarize what Damien was talking through there were the three pre-configured workflows. So I thought I would summarize them for you now. So here we go. So if we just took the simple one as an option, so we need three things really. Well, we deal with three things. And the first thing is the information that we need from you guys to enable us to do our job properly and give you the solution that you need. So if you took the simple option, we would just usually over something like Microsoft Teams or something similar, we would have a sort of a web session with you and just understand a list of your users, who you want to be approving or rejecting these documents, and get an understanding of the index, what we call index values for the documents. Now, don't worry too much about the terminology. If you're not up with sort of document management terminology, all we really mean there is labels associated to documents for when you're storing or searching on those documents. So we then go away document management solution, which is great for quick and easy storage and search and retrieval, but you'll also get a simple approval or rejection workflow in there as well. Now, the price we have for that is £150 per month for 4 named users. Now, there's no upfront cost at all with that, and you'd also get a few hours free remote training over Teams as well. Now, I appreciate many of you viewing this will say, well, we've got more than 4 users. That's absolutely fine. Feel free to drop us a line or give us a call. We can talk you through the licensing and how that would change if you were to add on more users to that package. So the intermediate that Damien took you through, we just need to gather a little bit more information and just need to understand a bit about your general ledger codes and an idea of the different cost centers you want involved in these multiple workflows. So the great thing about the intermediate option is that really you're starting to use a document management system here for its strengths. So here we're picking up data from the documents, we're making decisions for you, or the system is making decisions for you based on values or rules, and then automatically routing that document throughout a business based on those values. Now, as you can probably appreciate, there's a little bit more work involved our side on that option. So the price we have on that one is £250 per month for 4 named users. But again, there's no upfront cost at all. So it's just a monthly fee, and you'd also get some training included over Teams as well. So the advanced option, this is where Damien took you through our AMS export tool, where we produced that CSV. And this is where we're looking at integration with your in-house applications and bolt-ons like the digital signatures, for example, which is a different product to DocuWare. We just have integration. It's a plugin for DocuWare. So as hoping you can appreciate, it's a slightly different activity. So really, when we look at the advanced option, we would typically address this by having a scoping call, and it may be a bit longer than the first 2 options. Really dig down to what you're looking to achieve in the initial instance and what you're looking to achieve as a longer term objective. And then we're able to give you a sort of a price, because as hopefully you can appreciate, there's too many unknowns with this option, especially if we're doing lots of integration with your other systems, for us to be able to price you straight away. But what I will say is, don't necessarily be put off by this option. It may be that after we do the scoping call, that it won't be a lot more than the other options anyway. It's just that we need to figure out a few other bits and pieces first before we can give you a price that's accurate. So to summarize the different options, what I will say is that still the majority of our projects are carried out in the traditional way, where we carry out a scoping activity with you as a customer, and we would mirror what you do at the moment, but obviously electronically and through DocuWare, and hopefully streamline that process as part of the implementation. But what we wanted to do today was just really give you a few different options, perhaps a different way of looking at something like a document management system. And the message really being that it doesn't have to be complex, it doesn't have to be too scary, and it doesn't have to be too expensive. So hopefully we've achieved that. But that really concludes our webinar for today. So thank you so much for your time. It is appreciated. If you do want to get in contact, there's an email address and phone number and some social media contacts on the screen now, so please feel free to drop us a line. But I think what we'll do now is we'll go through any questions that we've received. So bear with me 1 second. Let me see whether we have any questions. Okay, so a question here. Do approvers count as users? So to answer your question very simply, typically yes they do, but there are some different license options for that, which don't necessarily count as a full named user license, and it probably needs a little bit more explanation, but what we'll do is we'll drop you an email afterwards, if that's okay, and just talk you through that and explain in a bit more detail for you. So we got one here. I noticed you exported data, which is great to see. Is it possible to import information from my CRM into the system?
Yeah, sure. So we can import various types of data into the system. DocuWare can also use the local data connector and a feature called auto indexing to do one of three things. So we can validate data against another system or database. So for instance, if we've received a purchase order, we can check the purchase order number exists. We can check the value number matches the value number in that record in the CRM system. We can retrieve information. So based on a query, if we receive a document, we can use information from that document to make a query and retrieve other parts of information, or we can actually update that system. So there's a variety of options for import, export, validation, and updating. I guess we just need to understand your requirement in a bit more detail to figure out the best option for you.
Great, thanks, David. So we'll have another question here. So I have a sales order process which is pretty much manual at the moment and falls down every time. The key member of staff is away. Could we use something like this to help?
Cool. So we're talking about sales order processing, weren't we? It's quite funny. We've got a couple of sales order projects on at the moment. You quite often end up with like a sales order administrator who's the hub of managing a sales order process. So when an order comes in, assigning the order to either an engineer if you're a services company, or to let's say the warehousing department if it needs to be picked and packed and then shipped. And DocuWare is a really good help in that situation in moving the sales order process through the business, but also creating lists of actions that need to be performed. And you can see, you know, which sales orders have moved on to which stage in the process. So yeah, absolutely, DocuWare is a good option for helping companies to manage that process, especially while somebody's away, because you quite often find if somebody's away, a lot of the information is in their head rather than on a computer screen for other people to see.
Great, thanks, Damien. We've got one here about forms. So what's the easiest way to get my handwritten consultation forms into the system? Could I just scan them was there another way of managing these? So if I don't mind taking this one. So Damien showed you very, very briefly some of the web form functionality within DocuWare. Now, what we tend to do with processes like this is try and take your current forms and make them into a web form, which of course is great for access because people can access, as long as they've got access to the internet, they can get hold of that form. But also, you actually get an opportunity to streamline that form in a lot of cases. Because they're dynamic, you can make them selective. So if the person filling out the form selects a certain option, it will show them different options below, depending on what they've selected. So it's a great way of turning a traditional handwritten paper-based process into an electronic one and capturing that information as well. Because as soon as it's in the web form, we can use that data and carry out workflow tasks or push a document through a business based on the data that we pick from that form. So got one here. I have a sales order process. So no, done that one. Sorry. I noticed you went through a two-way match. Do you know if I could match the original quote, invoice, and delivery notes?
Sure. So like a three-way matching, you can match as many things as you want, really. It's kind of up to you. So let's say you create a quote, then you receive a purchase order, then you send out the invoice. At each stage, we can check to see if the other document exists. We can relate those documents to each other. So effectively, we could match one against the other to confirm it's the right amount, the numbers match, double check that the goods have been received. And also, when you're searching for those documents, it's almost like a pack, so that you can see all three of those documents if there's a query. But yeah, we can kind of match as many things with as many other things as you want to. It's really up to you. You could also say receive a goods received note and then do a lookup to SAP or some other kind of database-driven system and double check that the goods exist, that the goods received note matches with the purchase order, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, pretty much whatever you want to do is possible.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again for your time, everyone. I think that concludes everything. If you do think of anything else, then please, again, don't hesitate to give us a call or an email. And that concludes the webinar. Thanks again for your time.